Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Or if this is your first time watching one of my videos, then welcome to my channel. And if you're interested in Evo 10 and rally art videos, then this is definitely the channel for you, so you should go ahead and subscribe, as I make Evo 10 and rally art related content and put videos out twice a week, every Wednesday and Sunday. So yeah, if that sounds like your sort of thing, then feel free to subscribe and help us grow the channel. And yeah, also feel free to go check out some of my previous videos, as they will also suit you. But with that said, let's get into today's topic of video, and that is, I've realized recently that I've owned this car for 6 years, and you see a lot of people asking questions, you know, should I buy one of these, what it's like owning one, and usually you just hear horror stories. So I figured, being that I've owned this for 6 years, daily driven it, put close to 100,000 kilometers on it, or 60,000 miles, I figured I'd be a pretty decent example of actually giving you the facts of what it's like owning one. Yeah, go over how reliable it's been and all that sort of stuff. So let's get straight into it. Start off with what I actually like about the car. Now, basically, I like a lot about the car. I like almost everything about this car. I really like the looks, and yes, mine isn't standard sort of looking. I've added a bit of stuff, but sort of majority of it is like OEM stuff. Like the body kit is the OEM Aero kit. I did add a carbon fiber rear wing and some blacked out headlights, wheels, suspension, a few carbon fiber pieces. But I just think they're a really good looking car. When the Evo 10 first got announced, I'd never owned an Evo before, but I'd always been a fan of the earlier models. Being that I'm in Australia, we've actually had pretty much all of the Evos here. So yeah, I had a yellow 5 that it was in, you know, when I was sort of younger, it was a street around from me, yellow 5 that I'd see every day. So I always really liked that. I really wanted 7, 8 or 9 basically, but when the 10 got announced and I saw it at in videos at motor shows and stuff, I really liked the look of it. It's, you know, I feel like it's really modern, and I feel like it's aged pretty well. So yeah, I really like the looks. I think they are a really great looking car, and I don't think they've aged. I think they still look like a modern sort of sports sedan, I guess you'd call it. Next up, the handling. The handling in these are amazing. Like, I'm coming from someone that's only owned just sort of large, not good handling sedans. So basically before this, I just owned like Holden Commodores and HSVs, which is like the Australian big family sedan, I guess you'd say. And then there was like the sports variants. But really the chassis isn't anything great. Like, they don't handle well, they go good in a straight line, but that's all I'd ever had. So then when I moved into this platform, the handling was just next level. Yeah, same for like the steering. Like, you can just come into a corner and just throw the steering wheel, and it's every time you're just going to get through that corner basically, unless you know, way overcook it into the corner. But I just think it's the best handling car I've ever driven. I'll say that by a long shot. Definitely the best car I've ever, handling car I've owned, and also I'd say the best car I've owned. But yeah, really good handling. If you haven't driven one and you're sort of considering them and looking at some other rivals like I was, then definitely go drive one and you'll be blown away. Next up would be just the practicality. It is a family sedan basically. Like, yeah, it's not the best sedan for, you know, if you have kids and your prams and strollers and you know, baby seats in the back, but it can be done. I know people that do it. I don't have any kids personally, but yeah, it's like a practical sedan. Like, I'm able to go get groceries in it, daily drive it, have backseat passengers if I need. The back seats are definitely large enough for passengers to be comfortable in, but at the same time, then you can go for a rip up the mountains or on a racetrack or something and have a lot of fun. So it is a really practical car to own. And also, another thing I really like is the aftermarket support. These just have such a large aftermarket following. There's so many parts you can get, so many manufacturers making parts, and lots of tuners out there. There's a lot of aftermarket support. I know some other cars, especially like the Holdens that I had previously, they're only in Australia, so obviously you're only going to get Australian companies making parts, and there's not as much you can do. But there's a lot of support out there, and yeah, my car has a lot of aftermarket parts, a lot of stock OEM upgraded parts, so you can sort of modify them how you want. Easy to get decent power out of. And then lastly, just be, what I like is all of those things. So the overall package, it is a really great overall package. Like, there's so much to like. Like, I know some of the other cars that I considered buying when I was looking at this, if I was doing the same video now, I may not have as many things that I love. There'd probably be more negatives, not, you know, not many, but just feel like this as a package, it's a family sedan. It's comfortable, practical, usable, and then at the same time, you want to go for a certain type of driving road in it, and it really performs. So that's going to start the video of my 6-year sort of ownership overview of just the things that I've really liked about this car. Okay, so I've talked about what I like about the car. Let's go into what I don't like, and really there isn't much. Pretty much the only thing would be the interior. Now, the interior is, like, I don't hate it, but it is very cheap. All the plastic is just really cheap and, yeah, not high quality. Like, even sitting like a Honda or something, like a Honda Accord or a Civic that's about of this era, and they're a lot nicer inside. Mitsubishi did really go for the cheapest option with this car for the interior, but that's kind of falls into a positive in a way, because it meant that they spent all their money, as people like journalists and everyone always says, the whole budget just went on to the, you know, sort of handling, the all-wheel drive system, the turbo, the wheels, the brakes, you know, you got the Recaro seats. So it's not the best interior. You know, it's a little bit, you know, like all red sort of, even like this center section there, just red. You can upgrade that to a later model that's color, but like all the lights and everything, they're all just like red, and there's no option to change them to like white. Yeah, all the dash and everything is just, you know, a hard plastic. But that's something that I'm personally going to modify and sort of change on the car. I want the interior to be up to the standard of the exterior. So yeah, it comes with the Recaros, like I said, and if you have the MR or a later model GSR, you'll probably have really nice full black leather interior. These seats are really comfortable, so I'm just going to be retrimming these in leather. I've just recently gotten the OEM steering wheel retrimmed in Alcantara. I've added a couple of gauges and everything, so all really I want to do now is just add a bit of suede and some leather and Alcantara and stuff. And then, yeah, I don't think I'll hate this interior. I don't hate it anyway, it's just that I know it could be better, and I think I will make it better. But that's pretty much the only thing I don't like about the car. I mean, there's little things like the paint's really easy to scratch and stuff like that, but really, it is what it is for this car. So that's about all I can say that I sort of hate or don't like about the car. All right, so next up, I'm going to talk about how reliable it's been and what I've actually broken on this car in the 6 years that I've owned it. And I think after 6.5 years, roughly, of ownership and 100,000 kilometers, I think I'm definitely qualified to sort of talk about the reliability of these. Like, most horror stories you hear of people that have never owned them, or owned them and something went wrong and they sold it, or their friend owned it. Being that I've actually owned this car for 6.5 years, driven it daily for that whole time and put like 100,000 kilometers on it, I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about reliability. So whether it's the 5-speed or the SST, I'm going to sort of cover both, because yeah, mine is the SST transmission, which is where you hear the most sort of horror stories. But yeah, anyway, let's get into what I've actually broken and had to replace. So firstly, since we're at the front of the car, is the exhaust manifold. So you can see probably that I have a tubular manifold there. I've upgraded. The reason I did that, I would have probably done it in the future anyway, but the reason I did upgrade to that one, which is a hyper tune, is that my OEM one cracked, which is a very common issue with these cars. It's probably the weakest point on the car. I think anyone who's owned one for a fair amount of time has had to deal with the cracked manifold issue. So that set me back around about $1,300 plus install. So yeah, that's not ideal. It'd be better if they did make a better exhaust manifold that didn't crack all the time, but it is what it is. So that is something that I've had to replace. Second was my suspension. So as you can see, I have, the car is lowered, and that is on aftermarket coilover suspension. Now, I was also definitely replacing this in my ownership regardless, but my coilovers were leaking, the factory ones, and they were on their way out. So I upgraded them earlier than what I planned on and went to some MCA Street Essential coilovers. and they set me back around, I think it's $1,800. Yeah, about $2,000 with install and wheel alignment and everything. So another thing, it's not a common issue like the manifold, but it has happened to me and it has happened to some other people that I know of. But yeah, generally it's one of the best upgrades you can make to these cars anyway, so I don't think anyone's going to be too worried about that. Third was my wastegate actuator. I don't think this is a very common one, but you can probably not really, you definitely can't really see it down there. Down in next to the turbo there, connected in. I've upgraded to a Turbo Smart 18 PSI wastegate actuator, as my stock one was actually, it wasn't really holding boost properly. There was something wrong with it, and I was chasing a boost issue for a while. I actually thought it was my cracked manifold, but ended up, after replacing the manifold, I still had this sort of tapering boost issue, ended up grabbing a new wastegate actuator, retuning the car, and found that was the issue. So luckily my tuner just touched up the tune with the new wastegate, because we had just completed a full tune with the new manifold and everything. And yeah, that was only $220 or so to fix. Installed it myself with a friend, and yeah, retuned it, just a couple of logs, and the tuner was able to adjust everything. So that's the third thing, and that's actually all that I've broken on this car. Everything else that I've replaced has actually just been personal preference to build the car into, looking and performing the way I wanted. So I've upgraded the turbo. There was nothing wrong with my factory turbo. I just got a good deal on the one that I upgraded to. Obviously, changed the looks, added wheels. Nothing wrong with the wheels. The BBS wheels that came on this car are really great, but I just wanted something a little bit wider that sort of filled the arches a bit. And yeah, everything else has just been personal preference to replace while modifying the car. The one other thing I will say is the SST. Now, my SST has never actually left me stranded after all this time. It's been very reliable to me. It drives great. I really enjoy driving it. But in saying that, my clutches are slipping and on their way out, so I will be getting them replaced this year. That'll be very soon, actually. And just to do the clutches, which is all that's actually an issue in my SST, is around about $3,000 or a bit under $3,000, all drive away package. But because the gearbox has to come out and get pulled apart to do that, I'm basically going to just, and I plan on keeping this car. I don't want to have an issue later, it goes back together and then something else goes wrong, because another common issue for the SST is the shift fork coming loose. So it will be also upgrading the shift fork. I will go upgraded clutches rather than stock, just so in the future, if I do plan on going like a bigger turbo or anything like that, they will be able to handle the power. But so I'll end up spending a bit more, but what I will, if I was to just be replacing the part that is broken, it would be about $3,000 for new OEM clutches installed. And yeah, that's about all that has broken, and I have included the SST there. So after 6.5 years, that's really not bad. Even if it was the manual Evo, I'm sure I would have gone through a clutch in that as well in this time. I know the factory clutch on the later models wasn't the best for the manual. So yeah, that would, you'd be looking at close to $2,000 for that. The SST did used to be a lot more, I will say. So $3,000 drive-away package for just clutches installed. That used to be more like $6,000. Prices have gone down, and there's a lot more shops that can do it now and are more experienced, whereas in the early days of these, when a lot of the horror stories started coming, anything went wrong with the SST, then Mitsubishi would just replace it with a whole new SST gearbox. And all it probably could have been was just a shift fork had come loose. So it could have been a under $1,000 fix, instead it turned into a $15,000 bill. So since then they have gotten a lot more reliable, but yeah, like I said, mine 6.5 years, now 180,000 kilometers on the clock, which is, I think it's 60,000 miles per 100,000 kilometers. So yeah, quite a few miles if you're in the US or the UK, but yeah, 180,000 kilometers on it. Those are the only 3 issues I've actually had. Okay, so next up is, have I actually lost much money on this car, or any money at all? And the answer is, I mean, it'd have to be yes. I did buy this car for $27,000 Australian 6.5 years ago, and now it's probably worth a little bit more than that if it was standard, to be honest. With the kilometers, at least it's worth that again. I think it could sell for that price easily going off the current market. Prices have kind of really risen on these lately. And I know modifications sometimes even lose value on the car. Luckily I've got just about all the stock parts, so if I was to sell my car, I could put the stock boot back on with the wing. I could easily get a set of stock wheels and stock mirrors back on. Yeah, stock steering wheel back in. Like, I've got a lot of standard parts that I did take off that I've kept, and then anything that broke, obviously, I would just leave. But so if I was to say sell it with, so the standard boot and wing, most of the engine modifications, just maybe remove some of the titanium parts and put standard stuff on, and yeah, like some standard headlights, because these are the MR headlights. So I could sell a lot of those parts off, make a few $1,000s, and then I could easily, I think, sell this for more than what I paid for it. So have I lost money? Well, yes, because I've spent a lot of money in modifying the car. But if I didn't, then it would have been boring. I probably would have sold it by now. But if I didn't modify it, then I think I could sell it for probably more than what I paid. And comparing that to just about all the other cars I was looking at when I purchased this, that's probably not the case, unless it was some of the sort of older JDM style cars I was looking at, like I considered an R33 GTR. That probably would be worth triple what I had paid for it, because I was looking at one for about 23 grand. FDR X7s, easily, I was going to spend about 25-ish on one of those. They're now worth 60 plus, and yeah, a lot of the sort of old JDM cars, they've sort of doubled and tripled in value in that time. And yeah, if I'd have been wise, maybe I could have bought one of those and made big money. But all the other modern sort of cars that I looked at, like STIs and BMWs and stuff, Nissan 370Z, they all did not keep their value as well as the Evo 10 did. So yeah, I've been lucky in the car that I chose. I bought it right when they announced, or right, around the time they announced that this would be the last Evo ever. So I kind of knew that it would never really drop in value too crazy. But yeah, so have I lost money on it? Yes and no is basically the answer there. Okay, so final thoughts and overview after 6 years of owning this car. Well, I'll just say this is the longest I've ever owned a car. Before this, 2 years was the most I'd owned a car, but usually my car's changed up sort of every 9 months to a year at most. And the fact that I've owned this for 6.5 years says it all, really. So yeah, this is definitely a keeper. I will be keeping this car even longer. I've been tempted to sell it once, but then I decided no, I need to just get suspension, get E85, spend some more money, get some more performance out of it. And then once I did, I was glad that I did. Then I got the most out of the car. The only time I've ever been tempted to sell it. And yeah, luckily that was just a quick temptation. Quickly changed my mind, realised no, I just need to spend another few $1,000s and get it just performing the way I wanted it to. So yeah, it's definitely a keeper, like I said. And it's basically getting to the point where I want it. Like when I bought this car stock standard, I didn't really imagine I'd get it to this stage. So like I said, I never really kept cars this long, never spent so much money on a car. It was always chopping and changing. So yeah, if I was, 6.5 year ago me, if I was to be seeing this is my car, I'd be pretty blown away at what I've created. And this is kind of like the vision of what I wanted. Yeah, like the wheels, for example, they are like my dream wheels. I absolutely love mag blue Rays. I didn't go and get mag blue TEs. I've just got the Graham-Light 57 DRs, but they are my favorite color for a wheel, the mag blue. I really love the OEM Aero kit. So the first few years I had this car, I was really looking for one. I finally got one, got it painted. The carbon boot, it's not so much the carbon part that I love, it's more just the duck lip. I really like that example because one of my favorite cars of all time is the M3 CSL. And this boot is actually called the CSL boot or trunk. So a lot of the parts and a lot of what I've made out of this car is exactly what I really want out of it. So to sell it now, I think would be absolutely crazy. Really now, after I do the SST rebuild, I'm just going to enjoy the car. Yeah, I know there'll be more mods, it never ends, I'll always find something else. But basically the way it looks is almost exactly what I want out of it. The way it performs, yeah, I may add a bigger turbo in the future. At this stage, there's no plans for that. But it's basically like my perfect daily driver. That's what I really wanted to create. That's why I went for the Evo in a sedan, more so than buying a coupe. Just because I wanted a car that I can keep long term. So if I have kids and need to use this as a family car, it is possible. Going on holidays in this car, which we've done a few times, it's great. Yeah, it's not the biggest boot, but it's usable. You've got back seats. So yeah, it's basically, I think to sell this now would be a huge mistake. the best thing to do is once you build a car and get it where you want it, you just got to drive it and enjoy it. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was helpful, or yeah, you found it entertaining. But yeah, I'm going to end it there. So definitely make sure you give it a like down below. Really appreciate that. And yeah, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. I'd really love to keep growing this channel. But yeah, with all that said, until next time, I'll catch you guys later.